Hi everybody, we're going to talk about how a suit should fit. So for those of you who are new to the channel, my name is Mark Cho. I'm co-founder of the Armoury, which is a men's clothing brand based out of Hong Kong and New York. And this is actually a refresh of a video we shot over 10 years ago. 10 years ago, we talked about what we think is the idealized suit silhouette, what are the things you're looking for. And you know, interestingly enough, 10 years later, we are actually going to be talking about very, very similar things, because that is the beauty of tailoring. You know, tailoring is a very classic, refined style. It doesn't have to change all that much year on year. So I'm going to show you some things that we look for, what are we aiming for, and hopefully that'll help you get a great suit. All right, let's get into it. So you might notice, obviously, that I'm not wearing a jacket. There's a reason for that. I want to highlight how well tailoring can create a silhouette for you. You know, this is one of the great abilities of tailoring. Unlike something like activewear, yoga wear, things that are kind of stretchy and close to the body where you cannot really hide anything, tailoring has the power to emphasize and de-emphasize different parts of your body. I wanted you to see, firstly, like what my body looks like when I don't wear a jacket. All right, having seen what I look like with a jacket off and now with a jacket on, what is the first thing you notice? To me, the first thing I would notice is the shoulder, right? My natural shoulder, my bone ends about here, but my jacket extends a little bit further, and it gives me a sense of breadth across the shoulders, which I think is really flattering. Next, you might notice the chest just seems a little bit better, like I seem to be standing a little bit straighter. And actually the reason for that is because the chest has what we call drape. It's a little bit of fullness, a little bit, almost an empty space between the chest of the jacket and my natural chest. Now there's another benefit to this, which is another flattering part in a silhouette is the waist. You always want to have a little bit of curvature, a little bit of shape in the waist. And how do you do this? You could, of course, simply keep taking in a jacket until it becomes uncomfortably tight, but obviously very obvious and visible. Or you could simply enlarge the chest, enlarge the shoulders to a reasonable amount to give you the illusion of a waist. And this, to me, is the much more ideal way of doing it because it's a lot more comfortable. And if you're comfortable, you're going to look great. Okay, next we're going to talk about the trousers. So for trousers, the overall goal is you want to create nice long lines. And there's a few different ways you're doing that. One is you're wearing the trouser relatively high. You know, these are not like jeans. These are trousers. Trousers typically should be sitting on the belly button or slightly below the belly button. The waistband of the trouser should be kind of just above the hip bone. So for me, the hip bone is right here. You should also be thinking about the diameter of the leg. So I don't like having overly narrow legs, because when you have overly narrow legs on your trousers, it tends to catch against your body and you're going to get this kind of more wobbly line rather than a nice straight crisp line like I have right now. Finally, there's the overall length of the trouser. So at the Armoury, we believe that a trouser looks best when it's no break. What that means is that the trouser's just barely touching the shoe. The front is just resting on the top of the shoe, as you can see. And ideally, it doesn't have to be, it's a preference thing, but ideally it does have a cuff. So the cuff is the little turn up here, 4 centimeters in my case. And having that cuff gives the trouser a little bit of extra weight at the bottom. It avoids that sort of flappy pajama trouser effect. And it just allows you to have that beautiful, long, straight leg line as you see here. So one of the most important first decisions you're going to make is what size suit are you going to start with? You see, when you're buying a ready-to-wear suit, there's only so much you can do in terms of alterations. And believe me, it is important to always consider all the alterations that you might end up doing in order to make a suit fit you well. You don't want to start with something that's really far off from your end goal. You know, the closer your starting point is to what you're hoping to achieve, the better the result is going to be. I normally wear an EU size 48, and I might switch to like a 46, I might switch to a 50, but I would very rarely deviate as far as a 44 or a 52. So keep your starting point in mind as you're selecting. So I normally wear a size 48. I've prepared a 48, a 46, and a 50 so that you can see some of the nuances in fit as you shift from size to size. And also bear in mind that although you think, oh, I must be a size 48, there might be various reasons for why you would deviate from that size as well. So let's start with the 46. Okay, so with the 46, on camera, I think it actually looks pretty good, but for me as the wearer, I do find it's compromising me a little bit in terms of comfort. Like I find it a little bit trim in the armhole, I find it a little bit narrow in the shoulder. I like having a little bit more mobility. And then also in the body of the jacket, when I button it, it is not de-emphasizing my tummy. In fact, it's the reverse. It's actually emphasizing the fact that I have a bit of a paunch here. All right, now for the 50. So the 50 is a little bit oversized on me. Some people like a really relaxed fit, in which case you can always get away with it. You know, it's up to you. But personally, I prefer something that's a little bit more fitted. You know, in this case, I find like the chest maybe a little bit too broad, the hips a little bit too broad, and there's a little bit too much space in the waist. Like I'm not seeing a nice hourglass as much as I should be. Okay, finally the 48. So the 48 is the size I should normally wear. I am definitely not a model fit, so there's still like some little tweaks I would do, but it's comfortable and it has mostly the right things going on with it. The chest has a little bit of drape, but not too much. It's comfortable in the shoulders, broad enough to be flattering, but not so broad that it's hanging off of me, and I got good mobility. The waist of the jacket is maybe a little bit trim for me. I do have some space, but you know, if I had a meal or something, I think I would need a little bit more space there. You can always have that altered and let out slightly. And the length is good. You know, when it comes to length, what you're looking for is half jacket, half trouser, or even erring a little bit on the side of a little bit less than half the body is jacket and a little bit more than half the body is trouser. Some people like to use the knuckle rule, where they say the jacket should be in line with the knuckle of the hand. The problem with that is if you have long arms, and I have relatively long arms, your jacket would be much, 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 much longer. Another important thing to keep in mind when you're trying to judge length is have whoever's helping you pin the sleeve, because this sleeve is a little bit longer than it needs to be because it's designed to be altered. But when the sleeve is too long, it throws off your perception of how long the jacket really is. So I like to show about 1 to 2 centimeters of cuff of the shirt under the jacket, as so. And when I look at it that way, it feels correct. When it comes to the buttons on the sleeves, some people like 3 buttons, some people like 4 buttons, some people even say there's different rules for that. The problem is all those rules contradict. So for us at the Armoury, what we do is if we see a client with relatively long arms, we just do 4 buttons. If we see a client with relatively short arms, we do 3 buttons. 2 buttons and 1 button are actually a thing as well. Classic American style, if you look at old Brooks Brothers from the 50s and 60s, would actually just have 2 buttons with a little bit of separation between the two. And Neapolitan jackets sometimes have just 1 button. Another thing to keep in mind when it comes to the fit of the jacket is how is it fitting against the back of the neck? You know, like is the collar of the jacket in contact with the collar of the shirt? The chest of the jacket should be relatively in contact with your actual chest. You shouldn't really be seeing this too much, like you don't want it to gape at the back, and you also don't want it to buckle like this. Some of you might notice you get a little bit of a wrinkle on the back of the collar here. Now, that is caused by when the jacket's shoulder angle is different from your body's shoulder angle. So one is not fitting into the other. If you imagine the jacket as a triangle and you imagine your body as a square, that's an exaggeration, of course, it's going to push a few things out of place, and that's what creates that little wrinkle back there. To a certain extent, it is alterable, so speak to your salesperson and see what can be done. All right, I hope you found that helpful. That is it for the Armoury's Guide to How a Suit Should Fit. I just want to leave you with one thing. You know, how a suit should fit is really up to you. Like, it's not about following a bunch of rules. It's not about following what a brand says. It's really about your self-expression. Maybe you want to wear things tighter. Maybe you want to wear things looser. As long as you're comfortable with yourself, you're going to look your best. All right? I just hope the advice that we gave you today will be helpful to you in your little journey down personal style. That's it for now, and thanks for watching.